Well, thanks so much for being here, guys. Like I said, I'm grateful, I'm honored, and humbled, and privileged that you took this time. When you walked in, hopefully you got a name tag. That's just your little flair for today. Lots of new people because you're in different life groups, which means you don't have the opportunity to rub shoulders as much. So that's just to help us connect. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Hopefully you got an answer sheet or a blanks sheet. That's just to keep you engaged and attention and be able to write notes. So if that's your learning style, that's for you. And yours won't be filled out yet, but mine is. Haha, that's just for me. Hopefully you also got something to write on, right? How polite am I to not make you write in the warehouse without anything under you? So this should be a nice little writing tab, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you're wondering why we're in this room and up front here, I feel already like a distance from you because there's like 50 of us. We could be in a lot smaller, more intimate setting without the microphone. But the reason is because what we're talking about today is so important that I want everybody who isn't able to attend this one event on a Saturday to be able to watch it. So we're going to record this and we'll email it out this week because I just want to make sure that what we're talking about here, that all of our life group leaders get on the same page as far as where God is speaking to us, where he's leading us, and how we're going forward. So that's why I'm up here on stage, far away from you, yelling at you in a booming voice. Hopefully that's not too intimidating. Hopefully it doesn't take away from just the community feel that I want us to have for this event, to be able to spend some time together. So that being said, those are my disclaimers. We're going to launch in here. So first and foremost, to get you guys awake this morning, if you're a seasoned life group leader, if you've led a life group at the Ransom in the past semesters, I just want you to raise your hands quickly. Raise your hands if this is a returning semester for you. Okay, keep your hands up for just a second. If your hand is not up, I want you to take stock of these people. If you're a new life group leader, if you're somebody new coming into this situation, these are people who are here for you. You can put your hands down. But these are people who have led life groups. They've been through this season before. They have opportunities and obstacles that are coming your way, and it would be good for you to network with them. Let me tell you something about the hands that were up there. Those hands represented over 50 life groups in the past year. Within those 50 life groups, there were 700 individuals that were involved or represented in a life group format here at the Ransom Church. That's in the last year, last semester. Depending on how we do our math and looking at our various attendance records, that's up to 65% of regular Ransom attenders that had a life group to call a home here at the Ransom Church. That's a fantastic statistic. Our goal, in case you have forgotten or maybe you haven't browsed the website, is to let 80% of our people be involved in life groups at the Ransom. That's what we're shooting for. That's what we're asking for. That's what we're trying to have people belong to a life group that fills up 80% of our regular attendance. That also means we also had a regular average recorded weekly attendance of 549 people in life groups. Now let me tell you why I say average weekly recorded temperature. Veteran leaders, you are all wonderful leaders. Some of you are not so wonderful at filling out your attendance reports. This is a big deal. This is a big deal because we represent lives, we represent numbers, and we're able to know how we're actually doing on this. So quick little stab there for attendance reports. Thanks to those of you who make it a regular habit. Please make it a regular habit. That's a lifeline from me to you so that I can have a pulse check on what's going on in your group and just as you walk alongside people. But over the course of this semester, that means we had over 15,000 God opportunities. What I mean by that is that's those individual attendance records who showed up to a life group. They had an opportunity to talk about the sermon, to have a kairos moment, to engage in whatever the topic was that night. Over 15,000 individual people at an individual event over the course of the semester. We had teen groups, marriage groups, R3 groups. We had a cardio dance group. Is that the correct phraseology for what it was? We tried that last year. We had college groups. We had young professional groups. And that was just a snapshot of this last semester. An unknown statistic that probably many of you don't know is that there were approximately 256 awkward paused faces of me in R3 groups. That's not something we publish a lot, but if you led an R3 group, you know what I'm talking about. I pulled out some highlights for you because if you're a new life group leader, you're just missing out. So yeah, that was a good one. And I think there's one more up there. There's that one. Somebody made a meme of that and tried to spread it all over my wall, anywho. So hopefully we got some solutions to maybe make that a little bit better for you guys so you don't have to stare at my awkward face in random places. But those are veteran leaders. You represent that group. You represent that strong number of people, of lives being impacted through discipleship at the Ransom. And I simply can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for the way that you've served, for what you're doing, and I can't thank you for how you represent those people in this space and you bring them before God and make yourself better so that you can lead them better. So let's flip the conversation now. Raise your hand if you're a new life group leader. Never led a life group here at the Ransom. This is your first time around. We're actually split about 50-50 in the room, I think, which is great. So new leaders. Veteran leaders, I want you to see, new leaders, get your hands up again. I want my veteran leaders to be able to see you. These guys are there and they need your support. They need your help. They don't even probably know it yet, but they do. So hands down, thanks a lot, guys. I just want you to take stock of that because this has to become a community. As this has gotten larger, as we have more and more people, we have over 38 new life group leaders this semester, including new teen life group leaders. That represents, absolutely, that represents over 20 new life groups that are starting this fall that were not there, or this fall that weren't there in the spring. We have a total of over 60 groups for this fall, and what that means is that with our current attendance numbers of what we would call regular Ransom attenders, that if 80% of Ransom wanted to be in a life group, if they said, yes, I want to live free of sin by joining a life group, we have the volunteers, the capacity of the life groups to be able to handle that volume, which is a tremendous thing that we're even within striking distance of that goal. So new life group leaders, you're incredibly important to that. Thanks for making this an opportunity, a way for you to better yourself, for us to grow together. And I'll say it again, guys, this room, the people in this room represent something monumental that's happening in the kingdom of God. People are being changed, people are being moved, and what you do is important. It's important in the life of the kingdom, it's important in the life of this church, it's important in the individual lives that you get to minister to on a weekly basis, and I can't thank you enough. So today we're going to celebrate a little bit, celebrate what God has done. We're also going to chart some courses for the future, cast a little vision about where God is taking us and how we're going to get some of those places. But I want to just break this down for you a little bit. So if I could get you to only understand one thing today, if you walk away and don't remember anything else, if you walk away and the rest is just kind of foggy, hear this from me personally. You guys are important. You're important, you're important, you're important. What you do is important. Who you are is important. The care of your soul is important. What you bring to the table is important. The way that you serve in the Ransom is important. The tasks that you do on a weekly basis, the things that you represent, the people in your life are important. You're important in the life of this church. The Ransom Church would not be able to be what God has asked us to be without you serving in this capacity. What you do is very important. And if I'm honest, I've only been doing this for about a year now. I didn't even realize how important the job of a life group leader was until this year. I just simply didn't get it. I thought it was a great volunteer opportunity. Thought there were a number of great opportunities for people to serve, and I was like, I'm in a life group anyway. I might as well be a life group leader. No big deal. But as I walked through this last year with many of you guys, I learned so much about what it means to be a life group leader, the significant and unique weights, pressures, things that you guys carry, the number of hats that you guys wear. I don't know if you're aware of this, but life group leaders, you're a host, right? You're an organizer, you're a communicator, sometimes you're a chaperone, sometimes you're a referee. You wear all of these hats, and you do them weekly. You do them day in and day out, and you often do it thanklessly. You often do it without recognition. And so I just want to break down this idea of some of the tasks that you guys take for leaders who are coming and also for new leaders. And so the first blank there is you're a teacher. First and foremost, right, you're in a life group setting. We're doing discipleship, which means you're a teacher. There's a lesson plan. You put work into that lesson plan, right? You're studying, you're preparing, because I give you way too many questions, and if you don't do your homework ahead of time, you're going to be asking way too many questions. You're going to be asking the same question twice. How many of you did that? How many of you asked the same question twice before you realized it because you didn't read through it? No honest people? That's fine. I know that you did. I'm okay with it. But you have to do your homework, right? We're preparing a lesson plan. We're taking people along a journey of discipleship, of growth. And so first and foremost, you're a teacher. You bring Bible lessons. If you're a topical group, you're preparing specific lessons for people to discuss. If you're an R3 leader, we're teaching the Bible. We're responding to certain stories. And so first and foremost, you're a teacher. You have students. You lead them along that plan. And some of you are comfortable in that role. Some of you, that's the reason why you're serving as a life group leader. Others of you, that's more of a stretch, and you rely on maybe your significant other or another leader in your group. But the fact that you're a teacher is important. And there's weight with that. There's real weight that comes with being a teacher. But you're not only just a teacher. That's not the only role that you fulfill. You're also a counselor. You're also a counselor. How many veteran leaders found yourself in a counseling situation in your groups this last year? Yeah. I was surprised by this. Not because I didn't think it happened, but I just forgot the weight of it. I forgot what it's like to be sitting in a life group and to have an event blow up in your face, to walk through some people that as a volunteer leader, you're leading a life group and they come to you and say, hey, we're talking about getting a divorce, or hey, we're unable to participate in the things that God wants us to because of crushing financial debt. And so we wind up being counselors as well. The close relationship that you have with the people in your group, the way in which you develop that relationship makes you a primary source for them to come for counseling, for reflecting, for helping out. And as I talked with many of you guys as leaders, there was just this sense of maybe unworthiness or just this sense of being overwhelmed as you had to talk people through these significant life events. And I just want to remind you that that's part of being a life group leader. That you're a counselor, that you're that building that relationship, that you're the first line of defense as people come. And you don't have to have all the answers, you don't have to have it all together, but you are that first line of defense, and what you say to them matters. The weight that you feel from those conversations is important. And know that you don't have to have all the conversations. You can bring them to our staff, you can bring them to a pastor, you can refer them to a professional counselor. We can help you with that. But you're a counselor. That's part of your role. It's part of the things that happen. Not only are you an individual counselor at times, but you're also a group counselor in the sense that we're walking through this together as a group, and you never know what's going to erupt from a conversation. You never know when an R3 question will take them back to a spiritually significant moment or a hurting moment. And now you've got to do some group therapy, some group counseling as people walk through what God's done in their life, what God is currently doing in their hearts. And so you've got this weight as a leader to be able to balance the health of the group along with the health of the individual. You're a counselor, and that's a real weight, and that's really, really important. And if you were just a Bible teacher, a lesson planner, and a counselor, that would be 2 full-time jobs. You could get paid a full-time salary for that. Unfortunately, you don't, and I apologize about that. But on top of those things, you're also a leader. You're also a leader. What I mean by that is that when it comes down to it, when we're sitting in the circle around the TV, when we're in the living room doing our weekly basis, everybody's looking at you. You feel the weight of that in ways that nobody else in the group does. You feel the weight of when a question is asked and it's dead silent. Right? You know what I'm talking about. You throw the question out there, and there you could hear a pin drop, and you just wait for what feels like an eternity, 30 seconds, and it's still just silent. And so you're processing through all that. You're the leader, right? They're looking to you, and you're the one who feels the weight of those significant pressures. You're the leader in the sense that when a conversation takes a big left turn, and you're going, man, how are we going to get back on track? How are we going to get back to the point? How are we going to get back to what God wants us to discuss and talk about here? You're the leader. You feel the weight of that in the way that nobody else in the room does. You feel the weight of having to take attendance every week, right? You're the leader. You feel that. You feel the weight of apprenticing, finding other group leaders, of making sure that everybody feels comfortable and safe in your home. You're the leader. There's real weight that comes with that. And I think if I could put a summation up on any of those first 3 points, it would be a scripture from James chapter 3. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers." I'd supplement the word leaders in that. "Should become teachers in the church, for we who teach and lead will be judged more strictly." If that doesn't scare you, we should probably have a significant conversation after this, right? There's a lot of weight that comes with being a leader. Being a life group leader is not just another opportunity to serve. It carries with it all of this weight, all of this responsibility, and I want you to know that I see that and that it's important. That we're with you as you do that, and that's why we're in this room together, is to come together as a community to share that burden equally and to be able to depend on others around that. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. So you're a teacher, you're a counselor, you're a leader, you feel the weight of all of those, but there's one more hat that I think you wear significantly on a week in, week out basis, and that's the hat of a shepherd. You're also a shepherd. Right? Shepherds watch over the flock. They're in charge of the flock. They know where their sheep are. If something happens to one of those sheep, the master ultimately holds them responsible. Right? Shepherds protect the flock. That's their job. You guys as life group leaders are shepherds of a small flock. You're the one who takes care of, who nurtures, who sees the hurting, and who has the opportunity to bandage them up, to go after lost sheep, to invite other sheep in to the fold. You're a shepherd. Now, the term shepherd is foreign to most of us. Not many of us have herds. I know there are a couple exceptions in this room, but there's another word that comes along with that. In the New Testament, it's actually the same word that's translated shepherd, but in the New Testament, we call it by a different name. Anybody know what that is? Pastor. The word is pastor. You guys are a pastor to a small church, to a small congregation. At the Ransom, we've been saying for a couple of years now that in order for us to do what God has wanted us to do, in order to have the growth that we've had, to get larger in the way that we have, we've had to get smaller. That's where you guys come in. You allow this big gargantuan thing called Sunday morning, where literally thousands of people are coming. Thousands of people on Sunday mornings are coming. And you get to make it small. You get to make it intimate. You get to be a shepherd, a pastor to a small group of people and to go through life with them. They're your flock. They look to you for spiritual guidance, to teach them, to lead them. They bring you questions. They respect your insights when you share. They respect what your life brings to the table. And again, if this doesn't terrify you, you should probably get out now. Because the weight of being a life group leader is tremendously important. And for that reason, you as individuals are important. It's important that you take care of yourself, that you model yourself well. It's important that you ask for help when you need it, because your role is far too important to let those things slide. So, you're a life group leader, and that's important. Again, just to reiterate, if my opening statements didn't make that, what is happening in your life groups is creating ripples and waves in eternity. In the kingdom of God is influenced by your faithfulness, by the work that you do week in and week out in your groups. I can't overemphasize that enough, that the work that we do is important. So, shameless plug. It's important. Your people are important. The things that you do, which makes your attendance reportings important. In summary, you're important as life group leaders. Therefore, your attendance summaries are important. It's important to know what goes on a weekly basis. If you walk out of here with nothing else, know that you're important. And your attendance reports are important. Okay, moving right along. So not only in the fact that you guys are important is this idea that I want you to walk away with. So that's one thing, right? If you walk away with one idea, it's that you're important. The second thing is that I want you to know that because of that importance, because of who you are and what you represent, you are supported. You are supported. There's a support system that we are putting in place, and we're trying to get better at that. We're going to do some of those things today with the fun name tags and an activity that we're going to do together, but we're trying to create a community among life group leaders where we can go for support, where we can go to find people, to find like-minded people to help us in our times of need and in our struggles. Again, we have over 100 leaders currently right now in those 60 life groups. Some leaders have taken a semester off, and so we just have an opportunity to minister to an incredible amount of leaders and people. And so last year, the first thing that I want to say is that I underestimated my ability to support life group leaders. I stepped into that first year. We had 50 life groups. I did the math. I said, you know what? It's real easy for me to get together, to visit life groups in homes, to be able to do it. As I started doing the math, I realized that in the course of a year, it was not even possible for me to get to every single life group in every single house because of just the way the calendars lined up. I would literally have to be busy every night of the week. So I didn't even try. So don't be hurt that I didn't come and visit your life group. But the first thing that I learned is just the fact that we have to get a broader support system in order to support you guys, in order to let you know where help is found, where you can reach out to. So a couple of 3 points on what this can do. And the first thing is this: Pastor Will is here to help you, right? I'm here to support you. I can't tell you how many times I sat down to coffee with a life group leader, was talking about things that have been going on in their group, things that have been persisting for a while, a hard personal struggle that they were going through, and I'm sitting across them at coffee and going, like, pick up the phone, right? You get an email from me once a week. Like, this is what I'm here for, is to be able to help you in those times of need. Nothing is too small. No prayer request is too little for me to give you personal attention. That's a huge part of my job, is supporting you. Now, like I said, that was daunting in this first semester, and I learned that. And so here's a couple ways that we're going to work on getting better at it. So as I surveyed the situation, I said, you know, we've got 50 life groups, now 60 life groups. We've got hundreds of leaders. How can we do a better job of connecting these people in community, right? This event is great, but we can't do this on a weekly, monthly basis because you guys are busy. Not only do you serve as life group leaders, but you have like actual lives and you have other things that correspond with those things. So getting together in this format just doesn't work regularly. So I was like, okay, is there some way that we as a church, that we as a community can come into your life, a way that we can create community in places where you guys already are and be able to come alongside you? Is there a way that this could happen easier? So our spiritual formation team got together, and I actually asked them some questions, and I'm going to embarrass Megan, who works in our spiritual formation department. She had this fantastic idea. It's also her birthday today. Don't tell her I told you that, because she might be mad at me. Anywho, it's her birthday. We're celebrating that. But so we were talking about how ways that we could create this community, and it was just this brilliant idea, this unfounded idea about knowing how we could do this, and it's revolutionary, you guys. I'm so excited about it. We actually created something just for you guys to be able to connect you in community. And you may, it's kind of out there already, so you may have heard of it, but it's this little thing called Facebook. Now, I know that's revolutionary, right? I know that maybe some of you haven't heard about it, some of you aren't up to date with the times, but what we're going to do is just create a Facebook community, right? A small group of invite only where life group leaders can come and we can just share with each other. I'm going to be posting some inspiration on there. As you guys have discussions and stories, I want us to share them on there. As you have struggles and prayer requests and just things to walk through, that way it shows up in your life where you're already at. Maybe you're already off Facebook and moving on to the next big things, but for this time, you're going to get an invite to join us into that group and to be able just to participate in a smaller group community. So that's something that we're trying to do, just to resource us around this room together with each other, to be able to rely on the people in this room so that some of you veterans can pour into some of those new life group leaders. You have a place to go and find help and support, and veteran leaders, you guys do as well. So as we set that up, I'm really excited about that, excited to launch that out to you guys, excited to be a part of that community, just have that in our lives. But that isn't enough, and there wasn't anything more there, because I think it takes a personal relationship to know that support level that you have. I think you have to have that conversation across from coffee, somebody who's in your life that you can actually connect with. And so I started doing some research this summer, started making some phone calls, and I'm excited to tell you that we're going to launch something that we're just calling Life Group Coaches. Coaches are here to support and encourage you. Bottom line, they're here to encourage you to make your life easier, not better. They're not fruit checkers. They're not here to check up on you doing the right things in your group. They're not here to make your life more difficult. They're here to provide you encouragement and support. Here's the way it's going to work. I've asked some people who've been significant in the conversation of life groups at the Ransom, some people who have had success multiplying life groups, some people who are passionate about coaching and resourcing life group leaders, and just pulled them into a small group of people, and we're going to be giving life group coaches charge over 5 small groups. They're going to visit your group once a semester, just to be present, just to give you some real-time feedback, to give you some real encouragement into your group, into your life, and they're going to have coffee with you once a semester, and they're going to pick up the tab. So there you go, free coffee once a semester, and again, they're just here to meet with you, to encourage you and support you. They're here to hear what's going on in your group, to come alongside you, to build that personal relationship with you, because I simply could not do it over the year, no matter how hard I try and how hard I wanted to. So I'm excited about having those coaches, having those voices in your life, and I hope that you'll be open and ready for that. We only have a couple of coaches right now, and so not everybody will get a life group coach this time around. We're going to try to do better at that, try to raise up some more people in there, but we're starting with 3 life group coaches, and they'll take charge over 15 groups, and we're going to unroll that this fall, and hopefully those relationships become meaningful in your life and a source of encouragement for you. And we're gonna jump back in here. You're over the halfway point, and we've got just 2 last points that I want to run through with you. And of course, it wouldn't be life group leader training without me using a whiteboard. So I've got a whiteboard behind me, and we're gonna do some drawing in a little bit. I'm excited about that. But let's jump back in here. Hopefully, you're not in a food or sugar coma, but we're gonna try to finish strong here. So that next point number 3, is that you are able. You are able. If I didn't scare you away in the first hour, I did scare a couple people away. They told me they weren't staying. I didn't take it personally, but you're able to do these things. Not only is your job important, not only are you supported in that role, but you are fundamentally able to do these things. You're able to be a life group leader. You're able to walk into these situations. I would go so far as to say that you are called and equipped by God to serve in the role in which you are serving in as life group leader. As a matter of fact, I think this is even bigger than that. I think this is a church issue, because really what we're talking about in life groups is discipleship, is discipling people. And so let's just take Jesus' words, not to life group leaders, but to all of us, right? Matthew 28:18-20. Jesus came and told his disciples, "I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, Go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you, and be sure of this, I am with you even to the ends of the age. See, we're called to make disciples, right? This is a life group leader thing, but it's also just a following Christ thing. We're called to make disciples, and the way that we do that primarily at the Ransom Church is in life groups. Life groups exist to accomplish what we call community discipleship. That's what we're about, community discipleship. That's the most basic premise of what life groups are about. So let's define some terms here, right? What is a disciple? Many of you know that we defined this just about a year ago as we stepped into kind of a new season for life groups. How many of you have that definition committed to heart? I've said it probably 1,000 times over this last year. Let's just say it together. At the Ransom, a disciple is someone who can recognize and... Okay, let's start again. And is it up on the screen now? I'd like to hear you because this is kind of one of those statements that I'm really passionate about, and I'd really like it if you were passionate about it as well. At the Ransom, a disciple is someone who can recognize and to hear the voice of God. Okay. At the Ransom, a disciple is someone who can recognize and respond to the voice of God in their life and who teaches others to do the same. We'll work on it. We'll work on the community reading together thing, but that's it, right? That's the core of our definition, right? That disciples recognize and respond. Remember the Kairos circle. I don't know how many of you guys remember that from what we've talked about. If you're a new life group leader, we'll be probably talking about it in my Sunday message in the upcoming couple months. But these God moments, these opportunities where God speaks in and we have an opportunity to learn from him, to draw a circle around the moment and to recognize God speaking, to say, what should I do about this? How should I act? And to come into that with a group of people and then to respond in obedience and with a plan so that we get back on the path that God has for us. That's the fundamental definition of a disciple and Jesus' own words, who teaches others to do the same. When Jesus speaks these words, he's speaking to his core committed followers, his groups of disciples, and he's saying, hey, go and teach people to do what you do. So for us, that's what a disciple is. That's what discipleship looks like. Life groups are the primary vehicle that we do, or we focus in on the discipleship process. Everything at the Ransom, everything, worship free, live free, serve free, is discipleship. But this is the most maybe programmed or the most focused that we try to move people along the path of spiritual growth and discipleship. And if there's anything that I've learned in this last year about discipleship, it's that discipleship happens in community. Discipleship happens in community. I would even go so far as to say it can't happen outside of community. Even if that community is only the person with Jesus through prayer and through those things, but there's a community aspect. There's a coming togetherness. That's the model that Jesus lays out for us as he pours into his people, as he pours into his disciples. He does it in community, in sharing life. He does it over tables and over breaking of bread and sharing food just like we did. He does it over sharing stories like we got to do in sharing and walking through some of those group scenarios. He does it in your groups many of the same ways. And so community is a fundamental part of what happens here at life groups. It's all about belonging, right? Finding a place for people to identify. Community means that it's a place that's fun and inviting, that we enjoy hanging out, right? It's a weekly rhythm. It's getting together, but it's also why we have treats. It's also why we shoot for a group size of 8 to 12 people. It's why we have icebreakers. It's why we meet on couches. Community is a fundamental element that must be in place at your life group. Now, confession time. I am not that great at community. I'm just not. I like to talk about deep issues, superficial, like talking about the flood is like nails on a chalkboard for me. The rainstorm that just happened. And so I've had a couple of you ask why I drew a little rain cloud with a thunderbolt on it. And that's because that's my conversation starter. You ask me a question and then I can talk about something about how the water affected me and ask you. Like, I'm just no good at having small kinds of conversations about community. How many of you know my wife, Melissa? How many of you would say that Melissa is good at community? Melissa loves people, all the time loves people. If we're doing anything, we should involve more people in doing it. We should invite people over. We should have dinner together. We should do things with people. I would like to sit at home quietly reading a book. Melissa would like to do that with 10 people around. That's just who Melissa is. And so I bring that up to say this. Do you think that our life group has community? It does. Do you think I'm in charge of that? Absolutely not. Does that mean that I'm less of the leader? Does that mean that it's not the part that I care about? No, it means that I've learned how to resource myself with somebody better, and my wife is better at creating community. So she does the treats, she does the icebreaker, she takes care of the fun and the hosting because she's better at that. And just let that be an encouragement for you that as you lead with perhaps a spouse or with a team of leaders, or if you're just leading in solo, to be able to find those people that you can rely on to help you out to create whichever side of the coin you don't have. Typically, we're better at community or we're better at discipleship, but it takes both. To do it. If we aim at just discipleship but don't have community, you're going to find yourself falling a little bit short from key relationships to be able to talk about even the things that we just talked about in those scenarios. If you have just community without discipleship, now we're just hanging out and having a fun time. So it takes both. But let me just make this really, really clear. Community is there because it gets us to discipleship. It's a byproduct. It goes hand in hand. But the goal of what we're doing here is creating disciples, is to be faithful in that call that Jesus gave us. And disciple making happens in community. Disciple making happens in community. That's the lens for it. And so the reason for community is discipleship, and the means for discipleship is community. Those two are inextricably connected. And to be honest, I didn't know that a year ago. I didn't understand that a year ago, and God has just impressed that on me as I've gotten to talk with you guys, meet with you guys, visit with you about how your life groups are going, how that community and discipleship are together. This is why when we talk about summer plans and we talk about the Christmas party, these community type events, why we talk about serving together at Live to Serve, these are opportunities to build and foster community. It's why we're going to do this year, again, we're going to be done before Thanksgiving, and your challenge is going to be find a time to just have a Christmas party. Do a white elephant. Do it on your same life group night, but a week later. Christmas gets busy, but this is a time when we celebrate community, when we build solid, lasting relationships. When the weather gets better, doing a grill out, doing a summer. I had one life group leader ask me, hey, I'm starting a new life group. I really don't know anybody in my life group. What should we do that first week? And I said, well, there's going to be a lesson because we have life groups who've been together for years, and so they're going to be ready to hit the ground running. But if you want to just take the week off from doing an R3 lesson and just have a barbecue so that you can build community and get to know each other, that may be the most effective first night on the calendar that you could possibly have. So as you step into this, as you step into your semester, knowing that aiming at community gets us further down the field, gets us closer to making disciples, gets us closer to doing what God asks us to do. And again, you're able to do that because God equips us and calls us to do it. You yourself are disciples as you follow Christ, and you're able to show people similar models, similar pathways as you introduce them through community to discipleship. So last but certainly not least, we're going to spend just a little bit of time camping on this point, and it's this idea that you are not alone. You're not alone. As a life group leader, hopefully you've learned that today as we've talked about community, some of the ways that we're trying to come alongside and support you. Hopefully you've heard that as we've talked through some of the scriptures that we've shared, just Jesus being able to equip you, that you're not alone in this endeavor, that you have opportunity to rely on people around you, to rely on this community, to rely on myself and coaches. But I want to talk about it from the opposite side, that you're not alone because we're all doing this thing together. We're all on the same objective. We're all trying to make disciples. We're all trying to set captives free, which is the vision of our church, and we're trying to do that through living free of sin in our life groups and in the things that we do. So you're not alone in this endeavor because you're surrounded by the people in this room, and the people in this room are some of the best people at this church that I know. You guys are. You're doing it day in and day out, and you've got the opportunity to bring people along with you. And we have a solidarity and a unity that comes from the fact that we're all doing this thing together, that we're not alone as we try to make disciples, as we try to figure out how to make the best discipleship experience that we can for people here at the Ransom. So let me just take a moment to look into the future for us in pursuit of this idea of doing this thing together, of making discipleship better at the Ransom, of raising up new discipleship levels at the Ransom. Let me tell you what that looks like. As the Ransom grows in numbers, we're adding 2 Saturday services. We're going from, 4 services to 6 services here in October. As we have those numbers increase, we've already talked about it, that in order to get bigger, we have to get smaller. In order to respond with what God is bringing to us, we have to be able to do life groups better. So we grew from 50 life groups last semester to 60 this semester, despite losing about 20 returning life group leaders. So we had about 30 new life group leaders because we lost about 20 life group leaders. So we grew by 30 life group leaders is what I'm trying to do there with the math. So by this meeting next year, we're going to have 100 groups represented in this room. We're going to have 100 groups represented. We're going to be able to say that we've got opportunity to have more people, more opportunities in more places. Places that I'm praying over like Laverne, like Pipestone, like further south, even further south of Harrisburg. Further north, we did some in Crooks and Renner this last time around. But we're going to get better at doing life groups in different places. We're going to have we had 500 at Live to Serve last year, over 500 people just serving in that community of event. Our goal for the event this year is to have over 1,000 people serving free of self at Live to Serve and serving over 70 different serving opportunities here in the Sioux Empire and in Harrisburg and in surrounding communities as we get together. That's our goals for doing this thing together, so that we can say a year from now that we did something that was bigger than we could handle, that was bigger than was even on our dreams list because God made it happen. Those are the things that we're about doing all together. And I want to talk to you just a little bit about something I've learned about how that happens and the way that it works in life groups. This entire summer, some of you think I just go on vacation all summer because I'm not doing R3s, which is only half true. I do a little bit of vacation, but I did a lot of just research. I called a lot of churches. I had a lot of conversations with other life groups pastors, just telling me, hey, talk to me about life groups in your scenario. Talk to me about how you do things well. Talk to me about your successes, your failures. Talk about what's working and what's not working. And there's a ton of different strategies on life groups, a ton of different things that are working, but I stumbled across just kind of a life pattern for life groups, a way in which things kind of work, a way in which they grow. And so I'm just going to move back to my whiteboard here. I'm visual, and I'm also a nerd. So this is really, really good for me. This may not be good for you. Completely fine with that. You can take a nap. Hopefully it's at least entertaining as I fumble around on the whiteboard here. But the bigger deal is that there's a little white space next to it. If you want to draw this out, if that helps you learn it, great. If you need to open that journal and draw it in there, great. I'm not saying this will absolutely help you in your daily walk. I am saying it's helpful to me. So this is what I'm just calling the, what do I call it on there? 4 stages of group life. This is not backed up by solid data. I didn't do a survey. This is just me kind of plucking out data and kind of putting things out and how my mind sees the data. So time on the bottom, right, length of things, and then effectiveness. Just a standard bell curve, right? You've seen this before. It's on multiple things. And I'm just going to talk about life groups as they go through stages of life and death, as they grow, as they fail, as things start up, as things kind of get to a stagnant point. And you have the opportunity to either put yourself on the map here or at least to have this information in the back of your head as we talk on a weekly basis about what it looks like to lead a leader, to raise an apprentice, to talk about multiplying groups. The reason why is because of this chart. So I'm going to try to stand out of the way here. I'm going to scoot over this way just a wee bit. So first X, I'm just going to put this dot right here, and we're going to call this starting. That's the first line in your blank. They're starting, right? So when groups are starting, they're dynamic. There's this freshness. There's this newness. People are getting together. They're learning each other's stories. They're feeling called because chances are they're jumping into a life group because they feel this yearning from the Holy Spirit, or they're new at the Ransom and going, well, they say we should be in life groups, so we should be in life groups. And there's just kind of this default energy that comes into a life group. So there's a bit of a pop, a bit of a sparkle that's with new and starting life groups. People are excited to be there. Here's the only deal with a starting life group, though. They're not tremendously effective. And it's not a bad thing, it's just a reality. A starting life group is tremendously good at community. They're good at building relationships. They're good at building some intimacy. They're good at accomplishing something on a task basis, but there isn't that real fellowship yet that happens. It builds over the course of the first semester for us or the first year, depending on how you can. But it takes time for a starting life group to move beyond just that ability to build community, to have relationships, and into things that matter. So starting groups have an energy. They excel at community. If they lack anything, it's real discipleship, mostly because we don't know each other well enough. We don't know each other's stories well enough. We haven't had opportunity to really dig our teeth into those things that matter. Again, some groups move faster through this stage than others do. But then I'm going to put our second X somewhere right in here. This would be growing. So these are groups that are growing. They're growing in the sense that they're growing in community. They've been doing this for a while now. They know each other's stories. People know each other's names. We have enough information to know what's going on in your life to be able to follow up with those things. Hey, heard about that last week. How's that going on? Community happens naturally at this point. Maybe even community happens outside of that regular life group. Maybe we're all coming over to watch the Super Bowl. Maybe there's something else going on that we're all getting together to go see, a concert, Life Flight, those types of events. But what's happened is that as the relationships have grown close, as people have begun to get to know each other, discipleship effectiveness has also gone up, because the community has grown to the point where it can withstand having real conversations about real things that are going on. At this stage, anybody who's in a growing life group will probably say this is one of the most effective discipleship environments they've ever been in. They feel known by their group. There's community. We're talking along a plan of biblical discipleship. They feel their walk growing. They feel like they can depend on the people around them to trust with those things. And the group dynamic carries the weight of being able to grow together in Christ. So that's a growing life group. Discipleship is on the rise. Community is very much a part, and the reason for the discipleship is there. Again, way oversimplifying, but we're gonna call this stabilizing. I hate that word, but I couldn't come up with anything else. I don't know if that's spelled right. Use the screen, not my writing. Yes. Stabilizing groups. I hate the word, but it's the best that I can say is that at some point, as group dynamics change, we've become so comfortable with each other. We've become so familiar with our stories and the group that we get really, really comfortable with each other. It loses some of the spark. It loses some of the intentionality. Again, if you ask people in this group, this is probably the healthiest community that they've ever been a part of. Real people with real problems that they can really be themselves at. It's also probably the most effective discipleship culture that they've ever been in. They feel like they're growing in Christ, like they know who he is, like they're able to recognize and respond. So they would say that the life group that's stabilizing is the best environment that they've ever been in as far as group life is concerned. And so again, community is great in the stabilized group. Discipleship is great in a stabilizing group, but something subtle changes within the culture that takes away some of the energy of the starting and growing and begins to just stabilize. Things stay on the calendar and they remain there. We're comfortable enough with people that we don't have to rely on coming to the extra events, and so things begin to slide. If a newcomer comes to a starting or growing group, their experience is one of growing and acceptance together. There's that newness, there's that freshness they come. In a stabilizing group, there comes a time when the new visitor feels the opposite effect. There's too many stories, there's too many relationships, and they're stuck on the outside looking in. It's not a fault of the group. It's not the group's intentionally trying to do this. Most groups are welcome and friendly. They just don't have all of this history to build up with the group. And so new people come or they don't get as deeply connected. Perhaps they only come once and then they find somewhere else to go. But that's the real problem that happens with a stabilizing group. The problem is not the group itself. The people are in community, they're in discipleship, everything is going swimmingly there. The problem is that the culture has shifted from here to here. Does that make sense? The culture of the group, what people walk into. Nothing wrong with a stabilizing group. There's nothing wrong with a group there. I want to be clear about that. The only issue is what comes next. Because what comes next on the curve is what I'm just going to call dying. A stabilized group will continue to exist indefinitely until something happens, until something breaks, until the leader moves. until an event comes up in somebody's life that causes something to shift. And because the stabilizing group has been together for so long, when a major component of that community breaks away, when a relationship changes, when lifestyles change, when kids go from young kids to teen kids, all of these things begin to shift. Something gives way, and key people leave. Maybe it's changing to another church. Maybe it's changing to another life group. But something happens. Something catalyzes this. And the problem is that we're at that downside of the curve. The community of the group that was so strong in the early times getting together has now become a backdrop because, again, as new people come into the group, they feel they can't connect at the level of community with the group. They just can't get to know the stories. They're too far behind the curve. There's 6 of them and 4 of the new, and there's just kind of this always wrestling match that happens there. So as I'm talking with churches, as I'm walking through these things, I just kind of have this idea and thought laid on my heart. And so different groups at different stages are in each of these things, and I want to be clear that none of these stages are necessarily bad for anybody that's in the group and participating, and none of them are beyond recovery and relief. So as you view this chart, my hope is that it becomes one of those conversation points that we can talk about. As we diagnose culture in groups, as we talk about areas of multiplication, those kinds of things, the way to, as with anything on the growth charts, any of those things, the way to circumvent them is to reinvent the groups. It is to take something that's going to follow this predictable pattern. It may take years, but it will happen. Let me just ask that question. How long do you think this life cycle takes?
Varies.
Huh? It does vary. Absolutely. Absolutely.
5 years.
5 years?
3 years.
3 years? 2 semesters? got a cynic back there. No worries, Mac. I'm with you there. I'll say this. This point, typically for us, because we're on semesters, is 2 years. Or 4 semesters. Does it vary? Absolutely. But by the time a group culture becomes coalesced and stable with each other, it's about 2 years, 4 semesters, you're there. Again, not bad. The people in your group, you as the leader, this is going to be the most effective life group that you've ever been in. You're going to love showing up. You're going to love the people. There's nothing wrong with being here, except that we're all doing something together, and accept that we're trying to create cultures of life groups where more and more people can attend and jump into. This is why everybody who starts having a life group, you hear me talking about apprenticing leaders. You hear me talking about multiplying groups. You hear me talking about getting to a stage where the group can successfully go from 16 into 2 groups of 8 and let 8 new people come in. Because where do you think the most vibrant and dynamic growth is, both in terms of the group and of the individual members of the group, happens on this chart? Most dynamic levels of growth.
Between growing and stabilizing.
Between starting and growing, right? The chart gives it to you, right? This is where it's growing, here to here. That's individual level, that's the level of effectiveness, those are things going on. That's when the group's most effective. Are things still happening at stabilizing? Absolutely. But that's when it's most effective. And so what we're trying to do is create a culture where we're intentionally aiming at the most effective times for discipleship and growth in our groups. Which means you've got 4 semesters or 2 years to build community, successful discipleship, and then figure out how to replicate it so that we don't start going downward. Does that make sense? Guys, I can't stress to you how important it is to find an apprentice leader, to be able to find that person to pour into, both for yourself, to have a partner as you minister, but also to be able to do this. A healthy group, this is the statement that God's been drilling into me that I've just been working with, is that spiritual growth takes movement. Spiritual growth takes movement. Just as stagnant water is no longer not water, it's just allows for unhealthy growth. I'll say that better, excuse me. Just as water that's stagnant is still water, it simply allows for unhealthy things to be cultivated in its environment. So a stabilizing group, stagnant groups that aren't moving and growing are not bad. They're still great groups. They just create environments whereby unhealthy things can develop. So this is the life group cycle that I'm still just working on. It's still completely a work in progress. I'd love to talk with you more about your experiences on this. This is what I've seen played out. And so the way, there is no point on here that's too late. Even the group that's here, or the group that's here, or the group that's here, it just takes different things at each level. For a starting group to be able to multiply, to create that healthy culture, you guys can put things in place now to be able to say things like, hey, we're going to build some of the greatest environments for community and discipleship that you've ever had in your life, but there will come a time when we're going to ask you to join another group, to lead another group, where God's going to ask you to do that, and we're going to celebrate that in this culture. I have that conversation with life groups that I lead regularly. I have it with you all regularly. The growing group, the group that's feeling everything, can have the conversation the same way. Hey, I need somebody to be able to be an apprentice leader because I need some help leading. We're going to be gone next week, and I need somebody to take the lesson. But I also know that our group is growing to 16, 20, 25 people, and I need an apprentice leader because otherwise we're going to get stuck, and our culture is going to shift. The stabilizing group is not too late to be able to have a critical conversation and to go, here's the deal, guys. I know this is the most effective group that you've ever been a part of. I know that you love it here. I love having each and every one of you here. But everybody in this group is capable of being a leader. Everybody in this group is capable of taking this culture that we have here, and we know the people, the friends, the relationships in our lives, and if we could make this group and change it into 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups, and be able to invite those people that we know into the kingdom of God and into this type of scenario, don't you think God would be glorified and honored by that? And the stabilizing group can begin to take everything that God's grown in them, everything that he's birthed in them, and then be able to create it and unveil it in the world around them. The dying group is not too late to do the same, to reinvent themselves and to be able to go, here's the deal, guys. This is where we're at. We've got to do something different. We've got to intentionally open our doors. We've got to intentionally shift something. Maybe it's changing time. Maybe it's moving from an R3 group to a topical group. We can have those conversations, but all that said, it's not too late. Okay? All this makes sense? I don't know if you're quiet because it's impactful or because you're bored, but I'm going to assume that it's because it's profound and impactful and is just magical. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing this summer. God's continuing to birth it in me, continuing to work it on me, and I'm continuing to learn it from him and just learn it from you guys. So please, let's have conversations about this. Let's talk about this more, and you can teach me a little bit more about whether or not this is true or not in our lives here at the Ransom. So that's what I've got for training today. Before I just let you out, let me just say one thing from the top of my lungs as clear as I possibly can. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here on Saturday morning instead of cleaning out your flooded basements. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for leading a life group, for serving in this capacity, for the weights and things that you feel. Pastor Phil wanted to be here to be able just to share a little bit of his sentiments with you, but he wasn't able to be. He's actually traveling. And so he just recorded a short video just to say thank you, that I'd like you guys to just hear from him all those things that I've been saying. So let's take a look.
Life group leaders, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there myself this morning. I had to be out of town, and I'm really bummed about that. But I just wanted to send a note to you to tell you thank you. Thank you for what you do. At the Ransom, you know that we're about 3 things: worship free of inhibition, live free of sin, and serve free of self. And those 3 things define who we are and what we do. As a life group leader, you are central to how we as a church accomplish Christ's goal of making more disciples. We often say around here that life groups fall into the live free bubble, but the reality is life groups are about creating disciples, and discipleship touches every part of the local church: worship free, live free, and serve free. Life groups don't just fit in a little box. They don't just fit in a little square. They touch every area of our lives. And if you've hosted a life group or you've been part of a life group, leading a life group before, you know that it's far more than just a Bible study, and it's far more than just getting together and sharing snacks. It's far more than just opening your home. It's doing life together. It's all of those things. What makes a life group real is that you're there with each other through the ups and downs of life. See, as a life group leader, you are a pastor to a group of people. You're a leader, a teacher, a shepherd, at times a counselor, and a shoulder to cry on. Your service to the kingdom and to this church is seldom easy to just draw a line around. And for that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a life group leader. Thank you for being a shepherd and a pastor to your people. Thank you for opening your home. Thank you for taking the risk. Thank you for doing everything you can to make Ransom all that it is. You see, we need you leading at this level to take this thing that is happening, this huge thing that's happening on the church level, and to make it intimate, and to make it a place that's safe for people to learn and grow. And that's what you do. You allow the church to be better, to lift people up, to care for them, to lead them forward, to disciple them, to love them, and to invite them into a deeper walk with you and with Jesus. You're a life group leader, and that's a big deal. So again, I can't thank you enough for serving. I hope that you have a great day today, and I hope that you have a great semester this fall, and I can't wait to hear all of the stories, testimonies, and miracles that God does through you as a life group leader. God bless.
So thanks, guys. I know I told you that I was done. I heard keys rustling, but I got one more thing for you. So hopefully you all got a journal on the way in, right? This is just our gift to you. Some of you may be saying thanks for the homework assignment, but that's not entirely what it is. So I just want to take together, as a community, explain a little bit about my sentiments behind this. If you take your journal and open it up, even if you already took notes in it, whatever, go to those first blank pages. The first page doesn't open so well, so I'd encourage you to do the one that folds open naturally. I'm going to encourage you to write at the top of the page there, life group members, life group roster. I want you to do something there that's going to be able to encourage you that as your semester starts, to have the front page of this be the list of names of the people that are in your group. Right? As we go through talking about being a teacher, a pastor, a counselor, a shepherd, a leader, all of those things, I want you to be able to visualize and see on a regular basis the people that you're caring for. And to be able to use this as then a prayer list. That's my challenge for you, is that as you take that time to prepare each week, that this would be a meaningful spot for you to stop and to pray over them.